in the code like saying preferred font with text style headline. And you can see it changed there. Kind of got a little bold to it. It's now the headline font. And the same thing here, the text view, I'm also going to set it to use a preferred font. But in this case, I'm going to use the body font, because this is clearly like the body of this content in this window. So now I've set these things to have the preferred fonts rather than the system fonts. And that's pretty much all that's required to set that up. So that's my UI. All right. So yeah, question?
Being iOS, is there an easy way to round out the corners on those buttons, or do you have to go through like a lot of masking?
Yeah, so the question is, if I wanted these to be like rounded rect buttons, which it's not really a thing in iOS 7 to have rounded rect buttons, by the way. It was a thing in iOS 6, but not so much a thing in iOS 7. How difficult would this be? And the answer is it wouldn't be that bad. It wouldn't be that hard. There's a mechanism. Rounded rect is a one-liner to create a rounded rect. And probably we wouldn't make these UI buttons. We just make them views. And it's really a one-liner to have a tap gesture to tap on it and cause it to do something. So, you know, a few lines of code is really not that difficult. In fact, you can make it not just rounded rect, but any shape that you wanted there or whatever. Question?
Is there any way to include like a CSS in it though, or no?
So the question is there any way to include CSS? Not really directly. However, these preferred fonts, for example, are plugged into the CSS system. So if you have content in your app that is coming from CSS source, you know, in a web view or something, we haven't talked about any of that yet, but you can do that. The fonts can match up and all synchronize with each other. So there is some synchronicity there, but you can't directly display it. OK, so let's look at the code to make this user interface do what we want. So I'm going to get my assistant editor up here. Let's put that right on the edge. Let's make some more space so you can see more code. And you can see that my default view controller has this method here, viewDidLoad, which is part of the view controller lifecycle that we're going to talk about in a second, and also did receive memory warning, which is not strictly speaking part of the view controller lifecycle, but I'm going to talk about it as part of the view controller lifecycle. I'm not going to demo that today, but I am later going to demo viewDidLoad, so we'll leave that in there for now. Right now it doesn't do anything except for call super and have a comment. Okay. So what do I need to do here? A couple of things. One, I'm going to want to be setting the mutable string attributes of this thing, so I need an outlet to this. So I'm just going to control drag here to create an outlet. I'm going to call it body, okay, because it's kind of like my body text view. And you can see that it's a UI text view, and I'm going to be able to send a message to this body to get its text storage, mutable string, and then I'm just going to start setting attributes. Okay, it's going to be simple as that. You know, I'm going to also grab onto this, and you'll see why later. I'm going to call this my headline. Okay, and so I could call that my header or my heading or title label or something like that. I'm going to call it headline just here to emphasize that we're talking about preferred fonts because I'm going to be showing that in the demo as well. So we've got this body in the headline. We could conceivably set things about the headline. I don't really have time for that, but we will be setting things in here. We got these colored buttons. Let's do those first. So I'm going to control drag here to have an action sent when we press on that button. I'm going to call this action change body selection color to match background of button. Okay, now you might laugh and say, whoa, that's a long name method, but long name methods are kind of preferred generally in Objective-C and especially in iOS, because Xcode's going to help you escape complete these things. And if you can have a method name like this that really matches, it says exactly what it does, it can be a good thing. It's programming, art of programming thing. I'm going to change the argument to be a UI button just like we did before and connect. So what does this method do? Well, hopefully with that long name, it's clear what it does, right? It changes whatever the selection is in our body right here. It changes the color of that to match the background view of this button. Okay, that's what this method is going to do. This method is one line of code. Okay, so let's look at that one line of code. We need to set attributes of the mutable string of our body. So I'm going to say self.body.textStorage. Now I have the NS mutable attributed string. Text storage is a subclass of it, but it is an NS mutable string. And I just want to add an attribute which is the foreground color of whatever's selected there. So the attribute is called NS foreground color, attribute name. Okay. The value, that's the color we want to set it to. Well, I said we're going to have it match the background of the button, so I'm going to say sender, which is the button that's sending this thing, background color. Okay. And then the range is what range of this text view's storage do I want to set to be that color? Well, I said I want it to be the selection, the body selection. So there's a method in text view called selected range, and it returns an NS range of what's selected, okay, what the user selection is. Okay, so you can see one line of code, and we've got our color, all 4 color buttons working as long as they're all wired up, which we know that this one is, right? Okay, because we wired that one up. There it is right there. We haven't wired this one up, but let's do that, and this one, and this one. Okay. So let's go ahead and run. We'll try and see if we can run it on the device over here. See if that works today. Hopefully no technical issues will arise. Now, this is an iPhone app that we're running here, and we're running it on an iPad. My demo machine happens to be an iPad. So this is running kind of in iPhone emulation mode. Okay, which is actually better in iOS 7 than it was in previous versions of iOS. It's not quite exactly the same. You notice that the status bar at the top, you don't get the, you know, what your carrier is and the battery life and all that stuff. That's kind of cut off. But otherwise, it's pretty similar. So you can see that we got that kind of pseudo-Latin text in there, and it's scrollable. And it's also selectable. So I just double tapped on that word, and we got it. Now, you get things for free on this, like defining words, looking them up in the dictionary. So if we hit define right here, it goes and looks it up. Nostrud, not found, not understand, no surprise there. But you can look that up. And of course, hopefully all our buttons work. So let's try red. That worked. And orange and purple. Okay, green. So that's working. That's setting things right. I could actually extend my selection, go orange, sets it all orange, pick another word, red. So that's working, super easy, okay? Everyone understand what we've done so far? So now let's go on and do the outline button and the unoutline button. So I'm just going to control drag from there. I'm going to call this outline. I don't need any argument here because I'm not looking at the button to determine how to do it. And in fact, in spirit of not long messaging, let's call it outline body selection. Okay, because that's kind of even clearer exactly what the outline is going to outline. So let's do that. Here we have outline body selection. Again, this one's same thing as before, body's text storage. And we're going to add attribute, but to do an outline, we need to do 2 things. One thing is we need to set the stroke width. Okay, that's the width that the character gets stroked, not filled, but stroked, its outer edge. And we also want to set the color of that stroke. I want it to be black. Okay, so if we have a word and its color is selected, it'll still fill with that color. Okay, because I'm going to specify a stroke that does a fill and a stroke, but the outline's going to be in black. So when we do add attribute, we need to do add attributes, plural, because we're going to add 2 attributes. Now this is a dictionary, and I can just create this dictionary right on the fly here with our @ curly brace. And one of the things we want is the stroke width. So here's the stroke width attribute name. And I'm going to set the stroke width to -3. Okay, -3, if you'll recall, means stroke width of 3 and also fill. If I said stroke width of @3, it would not fill. It would be clear, right? In the middle of it would be clear. So we don't want that. We want to fill whichever color we picked. We want that too. So that's that. And then let's also set the stroke color attribute to be UI color, black color. So I'm just doing this mostly so you can see how to put an actual color in there instead of here where we grab the color from somewhere else. You can use these class methods in UI color to do that. And we need the range, same thing as before, selected range. Okay? So now we're going to add both those attributes. to set to outline it. That's all we need there. Let's do unoutline while we're here. Save ourselves a little bit of time. I'm going to call this unoutline body selection. Done. And just again to show you a different method, let's unoutline by removing any stroke width attribute. I could probably set the stroke width to 0 as well, but I'm going to remove so that you can see how in NS mutable attributed string we can remove attributes. We just say remove attribute, NS stroke width attribute, range, self.body.selected range. Okay, so that's going to remove that attribute. We don't really need to remove the stroke color because if it's not being stroked, then the color doesn't matter. So it's kind of in there. It's a little extra, kind of, you could argue maybe wasted storage, although the storage of attributed string is really optimized to the nth degree. Okay, so I wouldn't worry too terribly much about that. All right, so let's go see if that works. Okay, so let's pick another word here like this one. Outline it. That is outlined. It just looks bold because it's filled with black still. Okay, because black was the color there. But if I fill it with orange, you can see it looks a little different, right? Or go over here to this word. Let's fill it, make it red, and then outline it. Okay? Everyone cool with that? And then we can unoutline as well. Go back to red. So outline, unoutline. Okay? Everyone understand that? Okay, so that's it for now. We'll be back to this in a second. Yeah?
So I'm not quite sure that I understand the difference between the negative 3 and the positive 3. Like, what's getting filled or isn't getting filled?
Okay, great question. So let's just be 100% clear. What's the difference between the negative 3 that we have right here, okay, and positive 3? Negative 3 means, in fact, you know what? I'll show you a demo of it. A little later, we'll see the button that says outline. Later, we're going to change it to be outlined, okay? And we won't fill it, and you'll see the difference, that it's not going to be filled with a color, okay? So let's get back to the slides, though. Oops. And over here. Next. Okay. View controller lifecycle. Okay, so this is an important thing to understand, the view controller lifecycle, because a lot of the things that you're going to control about how your view controller moves through time are going to be controlled by the methods that are part of the view controller lifecycle. Now, all the view controller lifecycle is a series of methods, okay, that are sent to UI view controller when things happen. Now, your controller is a subclass of UI view controller. You've probably noticed that. If you look at your code, you'll see that your controller that gets created for you by the template when you create a new app is a subclass of UI view controller. So it's going to be sent these messages, and you're going to override them if you want to find out when these things are happening. Don't forget to call super. Okay. Why do you need these things? Well, you need to be able to initialize your controller. You need to be able to find when you come on and off screen. You need to know when your bounds change, right? Your geometry changes. You got to know these things for your view controller's view to successfully live in the iOS world. So the start of this life cycle is creation. Okay. Most